everybody. My name is Nicole Rogerson. I'm the CEO of Autism Awareness Australia. I also have another job. I'm the National Director of the Lizard Centre, and mum to Jack is probably the job that got me here in the first place. I really want to thank Mitch Fifield for coming along today. I've been running around the halls of Parliament House for more years than I care to imagine, banging a drum. And I can honestly say that whatever day I turn up banging a drum, Mitch Fifield opens the doors and listens to my whinging. So thank you very much, Mitch. It's the first time, and I'm not saying this to be nice to you because you're sitting in the front row, I'm not a very nice person. I genuinely can say this is the first time we've had a federal minister who gets intervention, who gets intensity, who can spell ABA, and is going to help us through the NDIS actually see children receive evidence-based, good quality early intervention. So I thank you for that. I'm here to introduce the first speaker, but just listening to the conversation about NDIS made me want to just bring up one thing. Today my son with autism is 19, so I'm the old lady of the ABA world. But he's 19 and he's in a full-time job 5 days a week as an apprentice chef. And right now, he's paying taxes, contributing to the NDIS scheme, so some other 2-year-old can have the luck that he had when he was little and grow up to be a taxpayer. So I'm pretty proud to have a taxpayer. And come on, guys, we know what that is, right? We know what ABA is. It's not rocket science. It's good teaching. Good teaching to remediate the parts of autism that are going to make our lives difficult, our kids' lives difficult. We see it every single day. And I guess, I'm always the one talking to the parents. Hand up, who are my parents in the room? Oh, you're all so young and sweet. Okay, Mandy, yeah. I'm not talking to my parents this time. This time I'm talking to the practitioners in the room. Because you guys are pretty amazing. And I think for a really long time we've known, us parents have known, that you were the ones actually making the change in our children's lives. But I don't think we thank you enough. I don't think you realise the job that you do. This week, Lizard in Adelaide has had an 8-year-old boy who previously had 3 food groups after 4 days of intervention eat 81 bites of 8 different groups of food. You are the most humane, fabulous people, clever, brainy, life-changing people. Pat yourself on the back. You are doing amazing, amazing work. So thank you from us parents. So I think what's really important for ABA is for too long we've known how clever we were. We knew we were better than them. Now's the time to kind of stand up. The NDIS is providing us with an unusual ability to be heard. And I think it's really important as an ABA community for us to step outside of our small groups, step away from our individual services, and stand together as a group to make sure ABA as a field is well looked after in the NDIS world. And this is what I mean. I think it's time that ABA goes big or goes home. I think it's time for us to stand up and not apologise anymore for the amazing work that we do. No longer will ABA take the ticket or take the criticism that, oh, that's that expensive therapy. No, it's not. It's that most effective, intensive of therapies that changes lives. So I need you to stand with me when we go big and go national and say that ABA should be, and we won't rest until it is, the treatment of choice for every child in Australia with an autism spectrum disorder. So I'm going to stop sounding like a cranky lady because I just realised I do. And I'm going to get on with the job of what they asked me to do, which was introduce our first speaker. Now, I kind of thought, what will I say about Mitch? And then I thought, oh, God, I'm thanking one Mitch, and then introducing another Mitch, and there's like a whole meat in the Mitch sandwich kind of joke that I'm way too professional to do, so I won't. Suffice to say, our first speaker needs no introduction, is that he's an international legend in the field of behaviour analytics. I was very lucky a few weeks ago to get to go and play with the AP people in Long Beach in California, and I consider them to be the most impressive people working in the field at the moment, so I'm absolutely so delighted to give to you what I get to see all the time is the amazing people from AP, and in particular, our first speaker, Mitch Taubman.
Well, good morning. Everybody hear me okay? Good. All right, well, I'm here to talk about social skills. And I hope it's a particular take on social skills. I hope you find it that way because although I think this is changing somewhat within the field these days, in many cases, social skills has been a bit of a neglected area when it comes to applied behavior analysis and autism. And I think that's beginning to change, and I think we want to promote that change even further and also look at the nature, the content, the substance of that change as it goes forward. And that's a bit of what today is about. I'm going to start with a little bit of history, and so please forgive me that. I'm feeling a bit historical lately, and that's just because I'm getting old. But part of this, too, is I feel like, and this has to do a little bit with the way the field has been, especially in the States these days, is that I think in some cases, ABA is getting loosened from its moorings. And it becomes kind of important for us to remember where we came from, because I think the people who started this field, the people who moved from the experimental analysis of behavior and started applied behavior analysis, were really brilliant men and women. And we certainly stand on their shoulders. And the things that brought them to the development of this field should be the things that continue to serve as guiding principles for us. I certainly believe that. Some of you may know who this is. This is Dr. Ivar Lovaas. And I was fortunate enough to be an undergraduate with Ivar. As a matter of fact, that changed my career path, having taken his class at the University of California, Los Angeles. And I also was fortunate enough to work with Ivar postdoctorally, too. And part of the way, besides the fact that he is probably the single greatest influence on what we do in ABA and autism, I'm including his picture here because some of what I want to talk about today, and that is the nature of social skills, certainly came from Ivar. He was most definitely about authenticity and meaningfulness in the kinds of skills that we taught students, that we developed and established in students, in the way that we built their lives. And so I hope you'll see that that's reflected in some of what we have to say today. You may be a little less familiar with these gentlemen, but they all were colleagues together, along with Dr. Lovaas, at the University of Washington. And then they went off, many of them did, to the University of Kansas and formed a department there of just brilliance. These people were, again, the founders of our field, and I was fortunate enough to go to graduate school there. And it was kind of like it probably was in the early 20th century going to Vienna to study with the masters, because they worked incredibly collaboratively, and everything was about innovation and creativity, as well as science. Actually, the people in this picture are going from right to left is Don Baer and Mont Wolfe and Todd Risley. And you may have heard of them just because they wrote this article, which was in the very first issue of the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, which was early enough in the development of the field of ABA that it kind of defined in this article what ABA was supposed to be about. They talked about not only the behavioral piece of ABA, and not only the analytic piece of ABA, which certainly set it apart from the other disciplines in education and psychology, because it was scientific, but they also talked about the applied aspect. And this was very important, again, because it was coming out of the lab. It was coming into people's lives, into schools, into the community, into homes, and into problems of human behavior, things that challenged people's lives. And this was a discipline that was determined to make changes in people's lives. So the applied piece was very much emphasized. This is Montrose Wolfe. Many of you have not heard of him, perhaps, but you probably should have. He was one of the authors of the article. He was the first editor of Java. And he was probably the most inspirational person I've met in my entire life. And I've, again, got a chance to study with and learn from and work with giants. But I think that what made Mont exceptional was not only his brain, and not only was his work, but it was his heart. He was probably the most caring and decent person I have ever known, and he brought that not only to his relationships, but to his work, and I strongly believe to ABA. Now, Mont was the head, but you wouldn't know it because he was so collaborative, of a program that originally was called Achievement Place. Eventually it was called the Teaching Family Model. If you ever heard of teaching interactions, and I'll be talking a little bit about them, they came from the Teaching Family Model. The status today of complex motivation systems, token systems, that came from the Teaching Family Model. It was one of the first programs, along with the UCLA project, that took a series of procedures and turned it into a program, a project that was really a constellation of efforts that was designed to work in a particular area of problem, in this case with children that had gotten into trouble with the law. Now, or not got in trouble with the law. Around that time, Mont wrote this article. It's about social validity, which hopefully, again, you know something about. But it was mainly about the applied part of applied behavior analysis. And part of the reason it was written is because in working with children who had gotten into trouble with the law, it became clear that just rote, or rigid, or superficially oriented kinds of behavioral procedures wasn't cutting it. That we had complex individuals that were the recipient of behavioral services, and understanding that they were more than just the constellation of their behaviors in a certain sense. And that there was, in fact, a qualitative aspect to work with them. If you haven't, I really would advise you read this article, because it really gives you a sense of Mont, as well as of what the work was like at that time, and how, almost serendipitously, there were discoveries about how important the applied aspect was to what we do. And he talks about the fact that they started noticing that the relationship between the staff of these facilities for delinquent youth, the relationship they had with the kids was very important, and that there were elements to those relationships like warmth that were very critical, and that the behaviorists were having a hard time with what warmth was, that it was at the temperature in the facility. And the fact of the matter is that operationalizing them, treating them in a behavioral way, but still recognizing them and including them in the work became absolutely critical. You couldn't just discount them. It made a difference in terms of the effectiveness of the work. It made a difference in the community. It made a difference really every day within the program. And so developing a behavioral way to kind of address this and to measure this and to acknowledge this and to establish growth in those areas is really the content of what this article is about. And I think some of that has been lost over time. Sometimes people just think of social validity as a piece that you include within a research endeavor. But the fact of the matter is, it's very relevant to our interventional efforts, and it's very relevant to the heart as well as the applied aspect of what ABA is. And so I want to talk a little bit about how that affects our work in social skills and how it needs to inform and shape and really amplify our work in the social skills area, because that, as much as any area in ABA and autism, is really about that applied and qualitative piece. You can get away with, not necessarily having some of that, even in play skills, certainly self-help skills, but there is such a deep qualitative element, and we need to think about the social significance and the social quality and the social validity of social phenomena. So that's going to be really the rest of my talk here about how we've attempted at Autism Partnership to infuse our work in ABA and social skills with that kind of mentality. Part of that comes from the fact that even though the work is increasing in ABA and social skills, a good portion of it is still fairly rote and mechanical. Now, it often is that way so that we can kind of fit it into a behavioral paradigm. At least that's the thinking. But I think when it comes to the notion of its kind of day-to-day authenticity, when it comes to the way the rest of the world looks at it, I think it can be seen as rather mechanical, perhaps even robotic. Other approaches, and these include some of the other approaches, are not at all scientific, despite some of what may be some of the arguments and thinking out there. If there is research, it's oftentimes has very serious, in some cases fatal, empirical flaws, and that includes social stories, which has come to some prominence in the States. I don't know about here. But what these approaches do have is they seem to have a grasp for the fact that social skills need to kind of be social. They need to have a certain kind of essence, a certain kind of feel, a certain kind of flavor that makes it seem less mechanical. And especially when it comes to relationships, really seem to kind of capture a kind of an authenticity and a genuine social ability, a social feel to them. Just in terms of that thing that I threw out about some of the research about the effectiveness of some of those other approaches, I've listed a few studies. One is a review of the research on social stories, and the last two on there are head-to-head comparisons between one of the procedures I mentioned, and I'll talk a little bit more about in this talk, and that is the teaching interaction procedure and social stories themselves, head-to-head comparisons. And just as a preview of the last two, the social stories were really basically not effective in changing social behaviors, especially in generalization to naturally occurring kinds of social situations, circumstances, while the teaching and interaction procedure was in fact highly and comparatively effective. So what we need to do, and what our charge continues to be, in my opinion, is to somehow, in our ABA work, continue to work in evidence-based, in systematic, in the kind of manner that we know is necessary to establish and teach competencies and skills in individuals with autism, but at the same time capture that intent, that meaningfulness, that naturalness that exists quite readily in some of these other approaches, and provide really the kind of intervention that will truly change lives, and perhaps even most importantly, truly build relationships, because that becomes the measure of not only our work in many ways, but also is the test for authenticity. In fact, if those skills have that kind of deep social feel, then others will be drawn to the people that, in fact, retain that repertoire. Our question about how to do this started with curriculum. We were, at the time, now there's been some changes since that time, but at the time there really wasn't there wasn't any comprehensive curriculum in the social area. There were some curricula. Certainly our book, A Work in Progress, can serve as a curriculum in a number of areas. And I think it's quite comprehensive, for instance, in the speech and language and conversational communication area. But in the social area, for instance, Work in Progress says you should work on it, it's important. And that's about it. And a lot of the other curricula, and even some of the newer ones, are still fairly weak in this area, as they tend to address more basic phenomena, more basic skills. Things like eye contact and social initiation and responses and handshakes and the like. As we tried to start developing a curriculum, we just discovered, and it should be pretty obvious, that social skills are vast. It's a vast area. There's so much variability. And we're also dealing with individuals that have, very extreme challenges in the social area, and then we have people who have minimal challenges, and pretty much everything in between. And most of what we are is about our socialness. Most of what is complicated in your lives, you guys, your lives today, is sometimes a matter of your social relationships, your social abilities, your ability to deal with the people you work with, or your family members, or your significant others. That really is a matter of social skills and social relationships. It's not easy for us. So how do we distill all that down into people's lives was part of our challenge. So what we came up with is the social skills taxonomy. And it really is a social validity device. And in that it's designed to help guide us toward meaningful social skills. And it guides us in our assessments, and it guides us in our interventions. And it gives us a little bit of an ability to put our head and our hands around this really gross and nebulous area of social skills, because it is quite daunting. We do have a little bit of research support, some preliminary research support for the social skills taxonomy as well. And here is the taxonomy. It is divided into several areas. They are not mutually exclusive. This is a construct, but it is a construct just for interventional purposes as opposed to conceptual purposes. Each area contains beginning, middle, and intermediate skills. And again, it helps, I believe, organize and direct our efforts, and that really comprises its major purpose. This is the research. One of the studies is currently in press. The other one has been presented at a conference, much like this one, and will be submitted. We will be submitting it for publication. And although they focused on specific interventions, they also, at the same time, looked at the usage of the taxonomy, again, as a social validity measure within the study. And it was determined, and it did show, that it not only guided efforts that turned out to be effective, but also guided efforts that were, in the estimation of relevant and significant parties, meaningful, and that they produced meaningful gains. They produced gains that were not only significant in terms of controls, but socially significant. So let's quickly move forward to the first area of the social skills taxonomy. And again, remembering that certain skills may very well overlap with other areas. This just helps us kind of get our head around things. This is about the reading of social cues. It's not what you do in response to that reading of social cues, but it is really about social reads. That's this whole area. It's about developing a child's or an individual's ability to better understand the social phenomena that is occurring around them. It starts with pretty basic things, as you can see, and progresses to some very sophisticated ones, like a child or an individual having a sense of the fact that there may be enduring kinds of attributes or aspects to individuals, or that what is occurring in a social world around them isn't just about the immediate interactions that they are having with individuals, but that there are, in fact, connections between people that would define social dynamics. So we actually have developed programs, I think, in pretty much every one of the areas you're seeing here, have broken them down and build them up. But again, especially the more complicated variables here, we are, in fact, trying to preserve in their presentation and in the work that we do their natural kind of social quality. A lot of the work that we do in this area is in social discrimination work. We sometimes call it the cool, not cool procedure. We do have and have published some studies on the cool, not cool procedure. I'll be showing the videotape that kind of illustrates a little bit of that, and another video I'll show kind of shows it as well. The idea in this is, again, to kind of be able to teach the children to discriminate various parts of social cues, or contrasting kinds of social phenomena, so their ability to really understand and operate off of the social world around them increases and improves.
All right, my friends, now we're going to talk about something different. We're going to watch Seagull while she's playing, and we're going to see if she is busy or if she is ready. Okay, so let's watch and see. Okay, so Seagull, here you go. Oh. Brayden, what do you think about right now?
Ready.
What do you think, Huck?
Not ready.
Right. Do you remember what that's called, Sienna? If she's not ready? Okay, that's okay. It's called busy. Yeah, that's Seagull being busy. Look at, she's busy playing. She's putting more and more pieces on. That's busy. So, Brayden, what about right now? Are you Seagull? Busy or ready? No? What do you think, Sienna? Not ready. What is that one called if she's not ready? Yeah, she's busy. How about right now? Ashley. What about right now? Is Seagull busy or is she ready? Yeah, that's right. Look, she's sitting up. Her hands are not moving and busy. Her hands are still. She's ready. Sitting ready. Perfect.
Now, what I didn't include in this part of the video is that you'd be surprised how many of the children got this wrong. And you would think it's just kind of a very basic, really easily discriminable kind of phenomenon, somebody being preoccupied or somebody being available. Yet they were having a lot of problems with it. And as you can see, by itself it may seem a rather simple area, but it certainly could be a prerequisite for all sorts of other skills, like joining in play and participating in interactions and connecting with students in an awful lot of ways. So it turned out, as we were working on other skills, that this requisite was a hole within their repertoire that needed some additional work of this sort. But it is a fairly basic, probably intermediate area of the social awareness part of the taxonomy. The next area is social communication. This is, there's some individuals, especially people that are in the speech and language area, who tend to think of the fact that almost all social interaction or social phenomena, at least in their opinion, is of a communicative sort. I'm really not sure about that. I'm not sure I agree with that, but I do certainly feel that emphasis on the communicative pieces of someone's social repertoire becomes an extremely significant and important piece. And again, just like the other area, we are starting here with some very beginning skills, and bless you, and it continues to progress toward very complicated, more than just conversational skills. Again, where the focus on this is the social properties of these particular competencies and skills. And that is the emphasis in this particular area of intervention. I don't know if any of you have heard of the social responsiveness scale. Completely independently of this, I should mention, there are areas within that assessment, there's subcategories. Actually, a number of them happen to match these areas of the taxonomy as well. So again, not necessarily providing anything other than just some independent validity for the fact that these are important areas to focus on. And hopefully, one way or the other, the taxonomy captures most all social phenomena and skills you would want to focus upon in helping young people. I'm going to show you a rather lengthy video on working on both the social communication and the next taxonomy area, that's the social interaction one. But I want to talk very, very briefly about the teaching interaction, because you'll see not only the cool, not cool procedure being used, but you'll see teaching interactions. Teaching interactions are an ABA procedure. They're a little different than behavior skills training, including the inclusion of the rationale component. This does come from the teaching family model. It was used initially with a different population. Again, a population that still had significant needs in skill areas, especially social skills, and that was the delinquent population I was talking about. I mentioned I was a graduate student in that project, and when I went back to UCLA to work with Ivar again, Ivar Lovas, I brought teaching interactions with me. This was in the late 70s, early 80s, and we've been using them with students that had the capabilities to handle this procedure ever since. It's only been recently that we have done some research on this procedure, and this is some of the research. Both the early research that was done with the teaching family model at the top, which was with non-autistic population, and then with children and individuals with autism ever since. And we have found it to be very useful and effective. Obviously with students that have some degree of cognitive capacity, some degree of language capacity, and some degree of interactional ability to do an interaction-based procedure. For other students, we might very well use discrete trial teaching instead, or on a continuum toward teaching interactions for our social skills training.
Guys, you know when you're interrupting someone, do you know what that is? What's interrupting?
It's when you talk to someone and you're talking to someone else.
Whoa, dude, you know what? You were really listening the first time. That's a token for you. Way to go, my friend. Okay, that's exactly right. That's what we're going to work on right now. So, Kai, what's interrupting?
When talking to someone, when they're talking to someone else.
Whoa, dude, kiss your brain. Nicely done, Kai. That was really smart. Exactly. So what I want to do is I want to have two people come up and pretend to be a teacher. And then I'm going to go and either interrupt or wait cool. Okay, so who would like to come and be a teacher? Raise your hand.
I want to be the teacher.
Okay, I'm going to look and see who's a super kid right now. Let's see, Joseph and Colin. Come on up. You can be our two teachers. Okay, so you're here. You'll be Mr. Blue. You're the teacher, Mr. Blue. See, there are two up here. And then you're...
Mr. Blue.
Yeah, you're Mr. Blue, so come on over here, Mr. Blue. And you'll be Mr. Brown. And so you guys are talking.
Then say USTIN.
Got it. And then I'm going to come up and I want you guys to see if I'm interrupting. So everybody do a thumbs down if I'm interrupting. Okay, I like how Francis and Kai are doing it. Quinn, you're not doing it. If I'm waiting nicely, what kind of thumb will you give me, Francis?
Thumbs up.
You got it. Everybody do that. Nice, Quinn. Yeah, thumbs up. Okay, you guys ready to be our teachers?
Maybe we should go to the puppy. How's that sound?
Hey teacher, I need some help with my Play-Doh right now. Okay, so time out. What do you guys think? Thumbs down. What do you think, Quinn? Why? Perfect, Quinn. Nice. And you know what? You're sitting really nicely with your hands down right now. Quinn, I'm going to move you up just a little bit more, okay? It was really nice. Okay, boys, go ahead and go sit down. Thank you so much for your help. Okay, thanks, guys. Okay, now let's see if you guys are ready to practice some waiting or interrupting. But wait, are you guys going to practice interrupting? No, you guys are only going to do it the cool way because it's not very cool to be interrupting. Okay, so you guys are going to be, what's the cool way to do it again? What is it, Quinn?
Wait.
Perfect, Quinn. Kai, you know what? What are we talking about right now?
Interrupting.
You are really listening. Your hands are in your lap. You are focused, my friend. Ooh. Think someone's whiner. Pretty good on the line. Just about ready to make it. Okay, so who's ready to practice?
I do.
Let's see. Okay, so you're ready to practice the cool way of waiting, right? Who hasn't gone yet? Kai, you know what? You're almost a super kid.
I
Come on up.
haven't gone yet.
Okay, yeah, neither is Kai. We're going to give everybody a shot. And who wants to be another teacher? Quinn, come on up. Okay, so Quinn and I are talking, and I want Kai to come up and find a good time to talk to us, okay? So Quinn, what are you going to do this weekend?
I think I don't know.
You don't know? Man, there's a lot of things to do. Do you like to go to the beach?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be really fun. Hold on,
What
time
are you
out.
doing?
Time out. Hey, Justin, what do you think about how Kai did? Okay, it was cool. Why was it cool? He was waiting, but wait a minute, Kai, did you get to talk to us?
No,
Why not?
because I think I waited too long.
I think so too. I think when is a good time to say something, Francis? Perfect. After we're done talking. There was a time where we stopped, and that would be a good time to talk. So wait, Francis, tell me again, when is a good time to start talking?
When people start talking.
Exactly right. All right, ready and action. So Quinn, what are you going to do this weekend?
I don't really know.
You don't really know? I think there's going to be a lot of fun things. Oh, you know what I really hope I can do? I want to go to a circus.
Me too.
Oh, that'll be fun.
I think I'm going to a circus too.
Nicely done. Okay, guys, everybody vote. How do we think Kai did?
Good.
Perfect. Why do you think he did pretty good?
Because he waited to start.
Perfect. He waited. He didn't interrupt. Everybody say way to go, Kai. All right.
Everybody say, way to go, Kai. All the components of teaching interaction in there are actually components of the cool not cool procedure. Very child-friendly, fun, fluid kind of way, which again helps promote that socialness of the social skills work. You might notice too that she's continuing to work on their behavior, their compliance, attending, refraining from still motivational work. All those children have come as far as they have, as you see in the video. Because sometimes people say, well, if I only had kids like that, certainly we're talking about kids of a certain capability, but many of them have come very far because of the work that you saw. They are not hired, they're not children from Screen Actors Guild, they are actual students from our program, so children from our program. But you can see the behavioral work is ongoing and layered into the context of the teaching interaction work. The next area of the taxonomy is the social interaction area. This certainly intersects with the social communication segment of the taxonomy. However, the skills that are in this area because even though there may be a communicative component, the interactive process is really what's most prominent, is really where most of the instruction is necessary. And again, goes from very straightforward abilities to very sophisticated and complicated ones. I just want to say a couple of things about one of the skills here, and that's the initiating interactions piece. This is a part in which, again, infusing it with the social aspect becomes particularly important. A lot of work that we see about social initiation is really attempts at individuals to instruct children to initiate. And although that may produce some benefits and certainly may result in them initiating based on our direction interactions with others, it tends not to be for social reasons, but largely because of good instructional control, our instructional control. It becomes important in skills like this that we infuse the intent, that we create situations that are establishing operations for that intent, just as we do with manding, or what sometimes is called communication temptations, that for behaviors like this, we develop social temptations, and that we institute social interest and drive and motivation accordingly by the manner in which we program these skills. And that's not only true of this skill, but of many such skills. And that is the way we produce not only meaningful skills, authentic skills, but ones that have authentic social purpose associated with them.
Guys, have you ever had...
In the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the next area of the taxonomy. This one's a little different than the other areas, but we decided to put it in there because it does constitute an area that we provide instruction, but it's a gateway to a lot of the other areas. That is, if the child becomes a better social learner, if their learning to learn or learning how to learn abilities in the social area expands, then in many cases our direct instructional work in those areas diminishes. They are now in the slipstream of the social world, and they acquire their social abilities much as their peers do. So this becomes a very important area, and although some children can go just so far, the idea is to make them greater social sponges, really. Again, it may start with some very, very basic work, like basic imitation or basic observational learning, and expands to very sophisticated kinds of social behavior, like being receptive to group effects, just getting swept up in the impacts that sometimes simultaneous actions happen at all age levels, and the like. I'm going to show you a couple of quick videos on this. Oh, well, one quick and one a little less quick. The first one's some basic work, and it's just teaching instead of something like copy me or do this, just do that work with a couple of children actually that are a little bit more challenged. But you can even see a slight progression in the work across this relatively short video. One of the obviously things we really like about observational learning, it makes for a great prompt, first of all, but it also not only is a kind of a good social learning area as we can make it grow, it's a great way to promote social referencing. And it also is a very good way to at least contribute to the establishment of social value, social reinforcement value of others as they have the answers. Now here's a little bit more of a complicated program. It starts with a young lady being outside of the group, and they're working more on her incidental abilities to use social observational skills to get a sense of what is required in a group circumstance. So she has no information about really what the requirements are, and only knows what to do appropriately by the time the segment is over by really rather independently utilizing, not being directed to, but rather independently utilizing her observational learning skills.
So today, my friends, when you see your name, I want you to come over here and say your full name. So if Ryan, what's your full name? Your name is Ryan, and what's your last name? Yeah. So when you see your name, I need you to come over here, say your full name, okay? And then go give high five to Rachel. Huck, what do we need to do? Say our full name and
Give a high five to Rachel.
got it. What is the second thing?
Give a high five to Rachel.
Good, Julie, what's the second thing?
Give a high five to Rachel.
Good. Okay. Elle, you can come over.
Come over here.
Yeah. Okay.
Give a high five, Rachel.
Wait, that was really fast. That's great.
My name's Braden McDonald. High five, Rachel.
Good looking, Braden.
So cool. My elder is
Oh my goodness, that was so good. You figured it out. You said your name and you went and gave high five to Rachel. I have to move you down.
No.
Wow, no way. I have to move you up. That's great.
Not moving
Paying attention.
down to miss a fun
No way. You are moving up. That's the way to move up. You were checked in the whole time. That's great.
Not only was she checked in, but some of the feedback really should be that you learned from your friends, or you learned from watching your friends. The next area, perhaps in some ways the most important area, is the one of social relatedness. This really has to do with a lot of that essence and intent, a lot of what the drive and motivation is, and that it's the social nature, the authentic social nature of the skills that we're teaching. So this is certainly interrelated to all the other areas. But it is an area unto itself as well, and it has to do with building those social connections, social reinforcement value of children, as well as specific children in the development of relationships, and ultimately, hopefully, the development of friendships. So it starts again in a fairly basic kind of way. It's integrated with other work, as I mentioned, oftentimes in the form of work that is more than just social exposure, but is about establishing operation type work. And it culminates with some very sophisticated skill areas, or attribute areas, you might even call it. Things, the higher order kinds of social connection skills like empathy and caring and consideration. Now, in the social awareness part, we've talked about theory of mind, but here is more than theory of mind. It's the emotional resonance, emotional reaction, emotional response that comes along with that understanding of other people's perspective, thoughts, and feelings. I mean, you may have a theory of mind, but you potentially could care less. This is about the fact that it matters. And I'll have in a moment a little story about some of that. I want to give you a kind of a quick example of something that we learned in this regard, and then go through very, very quickly some information about some social skills group and social skills group research that we are in the process of doing currently. We, in the area of empathy, worked on it typically by teaching children to make empathic statements and engage in empathic responses. So if somebody got hurt, they learned to say, "Are you okay?" Or they learned to help. But in a lot of cases it worked, and we found out that it seemed to produce something that had a very genuine, authentic feel to it. But with one student who was very good at doing what we asked, but not very good at really caring much about people whatsoever, he would make statements of an empathic nature. So if somebody burst into flames, he would say, "Are you okay?" But he would just like warm his hands on them because he really didn't care. And I think, we realized we were building a budding sociopath. So we tried something, and it was, again, in the interest of time, go through it rather quickly, but it was much more respondently oriented, because we realized that that was the piece that was missing. The emotional content, the emotional piece, the respondent aspect, other than just a pure rote operant. So we realized that he did care about somebody, and that was himself, and we had lots of video, and he cared about his mom a little bit, but not nearly as much as he cared about himself. So we had lots of videos, because he'd been part of some research, of him engaging in a lot of activities, including ones in which he was quite happy because he, scored the winning goal, or unhappy because he accidentally got gum caught in his hair. We didn't put it in there, I swear. We just happened to have a video of it. And we started showing him these videos, and he did have a bit of a remote emotional response to them. He was happy for himself when he achieved something positive, and he was unhappy for himself, for instance, in the gum in the hair. He really kind of felt for himself. So we had developed an empathic response, at least the beginning of one. It was at a small distance, but it was at a distance. And we used that distance of time. We started including videos of his mom, and we started building his empathic behavior. And fast forwarding, talked to his mother just a couple of years ago, and he was in high school. He had a great group of friends. He walked out of the room, and I asked, how's his empathy? And she said, he doesn't have any. I'm kidding. That would be a really bad story. I asked about his empathy, and she said he actually cares a lot about his friends. They care about each other. He may not be the most empathic person in the world. You know, he's not the kind that will necessarily cry at animal movies. But for people that matter to him, he's really does. They absolutely matter to him in a true empathic and caring sense. And he used to be very mean to his grandparents. He really dotes on them now. I thought that was the absolute best news I could have heard. So. Again, capturing that essence, making these things authentic and meaningful is really about that social validity part and really about what our work is, I think, in its core. Groups become a really important vehicle for a lot of this, obviously. One-to-one work certainly has its place, but if we're talking about some of the more sophisticated social skills, they need to be occurring within a social arena. This is what I typically see in social skills groups, and I'm not going to go into all of this. I sometimes seem like a genius because I'll tell people who do groups, oh, I bet you do this, and I bet you do this, and I bet you do this, and they say, how do you know? And I've been just to enough of them that I typically see this kind of itinerary. I think this is more of what we need to see. We need to see more individualization. Even if the students have, or children have, the same need areas, they come to those problem areas differentially. And so there really needs to be a lot of individualization. There needs to be a lot of absolute systematic instruction, and there needs to be components where the adult gets out of the work, that you construct social opportunities that are coordinated and orchestrated, and sometimes follow through on a specific instruction, because oftentimes adults are way too important in these social skill groups, and they inhibit the interactions between children, and also they inhibit the relationship development piece. And so in that regard, I want to talk a little bit about some research that we are doing at Autism Partnership. This is a result of a grant that we've gotten, and that it involves the random assignment, actually, of children into either a social skills group or a waitlist group. And we're still in the process now of the waitlist group is actually having their intervention at this point in time. We've taken behavioral data, and as you can see, it's been pretty impressive. And especially as compared to the control group. This is one of the measures. It's the social skills, standardized social skills measure. And I want to point out that the pre and post are not statistically significant as different, but the post scores are, as well as the pre to post change with the intervention group, and not so with the control group. So on the behavioral measures, and on the global measures, the students in the social skills group of the sort I was kind of outlining for you have been doing excellent. By the way, these measures are taken by a blind tester, so they have no idea which group any of the students are in, as well as it being a randomized control. So I went through a few things rather quickly. A lot of the material, including a lot of the skill areas in the taxonomy, are in this book, Crafting Connections. The first part talks about a lot of the procedures and the issues, as well as some parameters of social skills groups. The last part of it is a curriculum. And so within the taxonomy and as exemplars, we have a lot of examples of social skills being broken down and phased out and being built up, maybe of some value to you. There is a chapter in there about how to develop, written by our very own Karen, that is about developing your own very much individualized social skills, because this really is a matter of individualization and differentiation. So authentic social skills, qualitative aspects, their social validity, making them meaningful. Hopefully some of that has been conveyed here today. I wish you, to continue to that work, to make that core of the important efforts we are doing with young individuals on the autism spectrum. Thank you very, very much.